The thing that jumps off the page for me this year were the upset winners. Brad, we had 4 of them, and I didn't expect that we would be talking about these people winning races at all this year. Austin Cindric, he wins because his teammate runs out of gas at Worldwide Technology. Daniel Suarez wins one of the closest finishes ever. Chase Briscoe and Harrison Burton. Of those 4 upset winners this year, which one was the most impressive in their win?
Oh, the most impressive. Oh, gosh, it's hard. Any one of them are hard to argue in so many different ways. I mean, Austin Cindric did have one of the fastest, if not the fastest, cars at Gateway. But I think just because we watched it last night, Chase Briscoe, and again, it goes back to that pass for the lead. He literally passed 3 cars in one corner to take the lead and then hung on to it on a final restart and drove into victory lane. I feel like, to me, that was more impressive than Suarez, than Harrison Burton, and Austin Cindric.
I mean, and he put a full race. I mean, it was a full race. He was up in the top 5 pretty much the entire race. It wasn't a fluke. It wasn't pit strategy. It wasn't any of that. They came to the racetrack. They brought a fast race car, and he drove his butt off, especially in that, last ditch power move that he made that got him to the lead, and he never looked back. It was without a doubt Chase Briscoe is the most impressive out of those 4.
All right, with those wins, all 4 of those drivers make it to the field of 16, and they are in the playoffs. 3 drivers that are not in the playoffs. Which one are you most surprised by, Alexis? Ross Chastain, Chris Buescher, Kyle Busch.
Oh man, my first gut says Kyle Busch because Kyle Busch is Kyle Busch. But when you break it down and you look at the actual environment and everything that has happened over the last couple of years, I might even say Chris Buescher. I mean, you think about what that team did a year ago, having very impressive back-to-back finishes, back-to-back wins, just having an impressive run. And I thought for sure they would be able to back that up again in 2024. Did not. You could say the same for Kyle Busch. He had 3 wins last year too, but just from sheer impressiveness, Chris Buescher I thought was one that we would definitely see make it into victory lane this year, and it didn't happen. Kyle Busch is one too.
Brad?
Yeah. Well, Chris Buescher had the best opportunity to win races among those 3. Obviously Darlington, by getting knocked out of the way by the regular season champion back when we were there in the spring, and then the Kansas loss to Kyle Larson, which was the closest in NASCAR history. If you asked me this at the beginning of the season, I probably would have said Chastain because I feel like they had been the most consistent in the next-gen car, and the biggest problem with them, their biggest Achilles heel, has been qualifying. They've been qualifying around 19th to 22nd, and because of that, they were not collecting stage points during these races, and that was the difference in him not advancing into the playoffs, in my opinion. So based on the way the season went, I would say Buescher. If you ask me preseason, I would say Chastain.
Brad, 2 other drivers that did not win this year. Are you surprised that we did not talk about Michael McDowell or Ricky Stenhouse Jr. getting to victory lane?
No, I'm not. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., I feel like we saw a lot more of what his career has been this year. Michael McDowell, I think we saw some really brilliant things happening, and I think a lot of that brilliance also came from the top of the pit box with his crew chief, Travis Peterson, who was willing to make the outside of the box call to try and do something that's going to help them. And they gave themselves some opportunity. It were just things that didn't pan out. It's great that those 2 are going to stay together next year when they move over to Spire Motorsports, but I'm not surprised that they're sitting outside of playoffs contention.
The biggest surprise for me in the not win column, and I think it probably would be for both of you as well, is even though he made the championship by the skin of his teeth, because what happened on lap 2 yesterday is Martin Truex Jr. I mean, that team really needs to figure out how they need to go buy a Lucky Rabbit's foot. They need to do something before we get to Atlanta, because otherwise they're just not going to have a chance.
I don't like saying this because I think personality-wise of the guys that are in the playoffs or maybe in the garage, I like Martin Truex Jr. the most.
Same.
He's just so down to earth. He's personable. He will speak to you in real terms, but I don't see that team making any noise at all in the playoffs. I mean, they've had 26 races to do so this year.
Yeah.
And they barely had a pulse.
And when you think about the fact that it is Truex's last season, I would love, because of the fact that we have had such an enjoyable experience covering him and his incredible story throughout his entire career, I would love to see him get back to victory lane at least once before the season's out. But I can't bet on it.
I agree. Look, last year he was the regular season champion.
Right.
And then the bottom fell out for them in the playoffs. And to Alexa's point, I would love to see him be able to win in his final season. There are two wins I would like to see in the playoffs, Truex and honestly Kyle Busch, because I just think the streak would be really cool to see that extend to 20 consecutive years for Kyle Busch. Not because I like or dislike Kyle Busch. I just think that is one of those records that is maybe top 3 of a record that will never be broken in our sport.
I think of those two things that you're talking about, the one that could happen is Kyle Busch winning.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they've gained a little bit of momentum, back-to-back runner-up finishes. They could win. Anybody can win this coming weekend when we're at Atlanta.
I mean, think about what happened the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That just goes to show you that all the stuff that we're talking about, speculation, all of this stuff, we go off of the data that we have, but anything could happen at any time, and that's what's so great about our sport.
Yeah, there was nothing in the cards that said these 4 upset winning drivers would win this year. Nothing at the start of the season told me that Chase Briscoe, especially with the troubles they had there with that race team, or Harrison Burton, or Daniel Suarez, or Austin Cindric are going to win races. But here they are, and they're all in the playoffs. And Austin Dillon does have a W this year.
That's true. That's one we didn't talk about either because of circumstance.
Kind of an odd duck situation there. He wins but doesn't get to go to the playoffs, and that's another driver that I didn't think had a snowball's chance of getting a W this year.
Same.
And there he does. He's got a checkered flag hanging up in the garage.